Well, let's start out with a really big story. I mean, this is huge, and this is a controversial topic, so I'd love for you guys to weigh in. If you want to sit on the sidelines a bit on this one, I totally understand, because this is a controversial topic, but it's something we've talked about in the past on this show, and this is about a $2 million malpractice verdict for a child gender transition surgery. And this is something actually, and I'm going to show a video from a clip in just a minute from when I was talking about this 3 years ago, but this is something I kind of predicted was going to happen. So I think it's worth breaking down. So this comes out of New York, which also I think that that's important because, I mean, as we all know, there are states that are more okay with certain topics, right? And if I had to predict which state, slapped down a malpractice verdict for a child transition surgery, my first thought would have been New York, which I think is interesting because if this happened in New York, I think it's much more likely to happen in other states. And there are, by what most people think, about 30 of these cases ongoing right now. So this is going to be news that's going on. All right, so a 22-year-old now, Fox variant, who is a woman but identified as a boy in her teen years, just won a $2 million malpractice lawsuit against her psychologist and her plastic surgeon. Okay, so it's kind of important, saying that she was pushed into getting a double mastectomy at 16 years old.
Wow.
16.
So that's coming from the actual child themselves. The suit.
Yes.
Not a child anymore.
Not a child anymore.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, who could have predicted this?
Ding,
right.
ding, ding.
We talked about this almost 3 years ago. I want to roll. This is a clip from a show, and the show was about gender transition in kids specifically, and I kind of spliced together. So roll that video, Brendan, if you would. As a doctor, as a physician, I'm against it. I'm against doing the more long-lasting things like hormone therapy and surgery. Here's why I say this. In the United States, the age of consent for someone to have a medical procedure is 18 years old, and there's a set reason for that. A minor very well may not have the intellectual capability to understand a procedure, understand the risks and benefits, and understand the long-lasting effects. I worry about the legal implications down the road. I see the potential lawsuits down the road. I do occasionally review cases for malpractice for plaintiffs because I like to make sure that plastic surgery is done properly. And so, in an instance where a lawsuit came up where somebody 10 years after surgery said, my life is ruined because I had this, and this doctor did this to me.
Took advantage of me or something.
Right, this doctor did this to me, and I was a child. How could I have consented to that? What would I say? At the end of the day, they're right. I mean, they can't make that decision at that age. All right.
Go buy your lottery ticket.
I know, right? Well, I mean, I knew this was coming. I mean, there's very few times where I say this is absolutely going to happen, but at that point I would have said this is absolutely going to happen, and of course it is happening. And this case was not 100% what I said, because I really do believe that about decisions being made for kids that are just so life-altering and so irreversible. In fact, I went on to talk about 3 things about why I was against specifically like the hormone therapy and the surgery for kids. And I think no matter what side of the spectrum you sit on this, because I'm pretty neutral. I mean, I personally think if you're an adult, go do what you want. Within reason, if you're not hurting anybody. I have zero problem with an adult making the decision to transition. I think there's definitely guardrails and stuff. But I mean, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh no, this is wrong or whatever. I mean, live your life, man. Yeah. Be you, do what you want. But with kids, I think it's different. I mean, there's
100%
just
different.
Yeah, it's just different, right? And so there was 3 things that I mentioned then that I'm going to mention again. And my biggest concern is the consent. A child can't consent, so someone's making that decision for them, which is the parents. But the second one, which I didn't mention in that clip, is the rate of what's called detransitioning or desisting, where basically a person who thinks they're a different gender decides, oh, maybe I'm not that gender, which is exactly what happened to Fox variant. As a child, she was like, I'm living my life as a boy, and then a couple years later, she wasn't. But at that point, you've irreversibly gone down a road that you can't back out of very easy, at least from, a...
So I have a question really quick about the story. So she went after not just the plastic surgeon, but also her therapist? Psychologist.
Yeah, psychologist. So there's a lot of good stuff to unpack, but keep going.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, because I really want to know, only because, when I was 19, I wanted to have a breast reduction. And it was a very big decision. Like, my plastic surgeon said, I'm not doing this, even though I was like 100% I want to.
Really?
He refused for that because
we could have a whole
I was
other
19,
segment on that.
Right? And I had to go through, with the psychologist.
They made you do all that.
I had to do all these things first before they would even entertain.
Do you mind, how many years ago was that?
I was 19, so I just turned 40 last year. So it was in 2004.
So over 20 years.
Yeah, so over 20 years. And it was because I hadn't went through my childbearing years. You know what I mean? There's all these things that, do you really want to go through with something?
All right, we're going to do a segment next week on that, because I have some really interesting things to say about that. But
that's why I want to ask about the psychologist.
But to your question, they have there are guidelines set forth for, okay, a child wants to, has gender dysphoria and wants to make a transition, and these guidelines need to be, followed. The problem is, there's two problems. I can tell you, because I know this from being in the business. One, those have evolved tremendously over the years. What they were when she did them are not the same as what they are today. And also, I know for a fact that not everyone is following them, because, I had someone come into my office, not recently, but somewhat recent past, and it was an adult, and they were asking about transition surgery, top surgery. And I was like, look, if you want to do this, there are checklists that you have to do. Like, I wouldn't even consider it unless you did all these. And they, what they told me? They're like, well, I went to a surgeon here in town, and they said I don't have to do any of that. Which means that there are people out there not following the guidelines, right? And then the guidelines are in flux. And so, that's a really big problem. But I'm gonna circle back real quick.
Sorry,
No, you're good. I like when you ask questions, because it opens up great conversation. But talking about the three concerns I have with the hormone therapy and transition in surgery in kids, the consent, the rate of desysting. But the third one is, and I think it's important to know, the data supporting the benefits of those really extreme changes is very weak. When it first came out, it was like tiny studies, like 10 people. And everyone's like, oh, well, this study says that this is a good thing and there's benefits. Well, then what happened is there's a bunch of studies that came out in Europe where this really took off, and the data didn't say that it was beneficial. And that's why Europe backed off. I mean, we did a whole segment about that a year ago, that Europe suddenly said no mas on kids specifically. So those are my three concerns. But going back to the case, which is what you were asking about, the psychologist took the brunt of that decision, actually, because it was broken down. It was broken down into how much fault and money each party had to pay, and it was 70% the psychologist and 30% the surgeon. And you want to know why? And this is the saddest part. Varian's mom was against her having the surgery, but she had to make the consent because Varian was a child at the time, and she says in court that she did it because the therapist told her that her daughter would commit suicide if she didn't. And she was basically guilted.
Got chills.
She was guilted into making a decision that she didn't want to make because she was told by authorities that if she didn't, her daughter was going to kill herself. And another interesting fact is the head of the ASPS, I forget his name, so apologies, I'm not in the academic world, but his name's been popping up lately because he specifically came out recently and said that gender transition surgery is not, a preventative for suicide. This guy who's the head of the plastic surgery, which is the people who are doing this, is no, this is not a preventative thing for suicide. It's just not what it's used for. So, this is a huge case, and it's going to echo throughout, because what's going to happen now that this verdict hit, and this I see this in other ways where a surgeon gets caught doing something bad, and then suddenly 10 more people come out of the woodwork and say, oh, I was also harmed by the surgeon, and then it multiplies. The same thing's going to happen here. there's already 30 cases that are going. I know for a fact one is in Texas because somebody in the media was asking me about this, and I was like, I think there's a Texas case, and so I searched, and there is one that's like kind of ongoing. But these things take years, right? But like this is going to open up a lot more lawsuits. Because the thing is like what's going to happen from here. I mean, lawsuit floodgates are going to open. I do think restrictions are going to tighten. I think the era of the guy that came into my office and said, oh, the other surgeon told me I didn't have to do any of this, I think that's going to be gone. People are going to get a lot more strict because they realize that they could get hit with these big lawsuits.
I also don't think it's a bad thing to be more strict when it comes to children.
Again,
as you said with
I don't
adults,
either. I mean,
do what you want, right? But children.
Yeah, and exactly the same. Like, I think for adults, do what you want. I mean, follow the data to make sure that you're making a decision that's, more beneficial than not. But I mean, I personally don't have a problem, and I almost never believe in bans or anything like that. It's just not. I'm a very kind of libertarian guy, so I don't believe in a lot of laws that ban stuff. I think that that's bad. But this would probably be the one exception where, if there was like some new federal law that said, okay, you can't do a irreversible life-changing surgery on a child until they're of age, I'd be like, you know what, that's actually a pretty good idea. I mean, personally, I mean, I know it's a sticky subject, but I just don't see the benefit in this. I see a lot of potential downside, and you can always delay these things. I mean, I think that a lot of the big push by the more activist doctors was like, oh, this is going to save lives. Right? Because, I mean, you look at the data on kids that have gender dysphoria, they do have a higher suicide rate. I mean, that's well established.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of debate in like how high that is. Again, looking at data is just one of those things where even as someone who used to write research papers, it's kind of mind numbing because a paper can, have some data and then make a conclusion, and just the way the data is collected or presented, like you never know if it's like, is this real or not real?
Yeah.
So it gets really muddy, and so what you have to do is you have to wait until there's a lot of studies out there. And so, as the years have gone by, the studies that have come out on this as, more and more cases were done, it's not really like reinforcing that this is a good idea. So, and people always ask like, okay, is this really happening in the United States? And for a lot of years, it was kind of unknown. But I did find some actual hard data that said specifically for what she had done, which is basically a female to male breast removal mastectomy surgery, that there's been at least 5,000 of those done on minors, kids, not adults, minors in the United States in the last approximately 8 years.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. Like I thought it was going to be on the order of like a couple of hundred, a few hundred. And when I found that data point just this past week, I was like, oh man, this actually is happening a lot,
It's a tough spot, I think about everyone that's kind of involved.
It is, and you feel for these, kids who really, have gender dysphoria. Yeah. I mean, it's like a crippling thing.
Oh,
I mean, it's not a joke, right? And, but again, I like to think of everything very neutrally. Like I stay out of the political side of this because I really don't like either political side.
I just don't think there needs to be a hard line. I think that there's kind of a weird gray area for these type of things.
Yeah, there definitely is. But yeah, this case is big. It's big. It's going to be talked about.
And when did this happen? This week?
Friday.
Okay.
Last Friday it came down. Wow. Yeah. So this is going to be talked about a lot. It already is. My social media is blown up about it. And part of that is the algorithm, right? I was looking at it. So every freaking post I see now is about this lawsuit, and you got people on both sides.
Yeah, I was going to say, are people swaying a certain way in how they feel about this, or is it kind of just like what we're saying?
It's what you'd expect.
Yeah.
The people who want to see it go down are cheering it, and the people who are want this to be available, or this is a bad thing, or they're trying to pick it apart or whatever. But the problem is it's not going to be a one-off.
Yeah.
It's going to be more, and it's going to be more. I think in the next year you're going to just see a continual trickle of these malpractice cases that are settling, but then a floodgate of new ones. So, Brenda, anything you want to weigh in? You don't have to if you don't want.
No, I agree. This is I feel like this is a hard spot for me to kind of bounce in on, because it's I don't know. It's sad,
It's a
but
big topic.
it is, yeah.
It's like-
It's a big topic, but it's a
Yeah.
hard one. I think it's like these type of stories are very unique to the situation. Like
Yeah.
Exactly.
it's not like a
And-
blanket. You can't just be like, oh, let's blanket this. Like
right.
no.
And you want to see all sides of things.
Yeah,
and I definitely do. Like, I really do dig into this. As I said, like, I have, no issue with people that want to live their life however they want to live their life. But at the point that it's a child and these, irreversible decisions are being made, man, I just can't get on board knowing
Yeah.
what I know.
Yeah.
So,
Thinking it from a parent's perspective, I'm just,
Yeah.
what a tough spot. Like,
yeah.